All right, let's look at exercise 8.8 and preparing a manufacturing overhead budget. So Seanwell Company is a manufacturer. They are preparing their manufacturing overhead budget for budget period 2017. Data related to overhead is as follows. So they tell us that their basis for overhead is direct labor hours. Each unit produced requires 2 hours. Units to be produced each quarter would be 2,500 in quarter one, 2,750 in quarter two, 3,100 in quarter three, 3,300 in quarter four. And remember, if this information wasn't given and you were preparing all the budgets, which budget would you look to find that information? You look to your production budget. That is coming from your production budget. Variable overhead per direct labor hour, indirect labor of 80 cents, indirect material of $1.75, and then fixed overhead costs per quarter, factory supervisor salary of 20,000 per quarter, depreciation of 5,000. So based off of that, we can prepare a manufacturing overhead budget. Again, looking at the heading first, the name of the company, Seanwell Company, the name of the budget, manufacturing overhead budget, and the period, in this case for the year ending December 31st of 2017. There's two sections, or really there's three sections to this budget. First, we are looking at converting from units produced to whatever the basis for overhead application is. Remember, they said they apply overhead based off of direct labor hours. So we need to convert our units to direct labor hours. So units produced, they gave us 2,500 in Q1, 2,750 Q2, 3,100 in Q3, and 3,300 in Q4. Each unit, they said, requires 2 direct labor hours to be produced. So total direct labor hours we expect to incur in Q1 is 5,000, and we simply multiply the 2 to get that. 5,500 in Q2, 6,200 in Q3, again multiplying the 2 together, 6,600 in Q4. The reason we're doing this conversion is because variable manufacturing overhead, again, is based off of the amount of labor hours we expect to incur. So we look at our two sections of manufacturing overhead. We have our variable section and we have our fixed manufacturing overhead section. Let's look at the variable section first. Indirect labor, they said the rate was 80 cents per direct labor hour. That's why we calculated the total direct labor hours incurred in each quarter, because now we can use these predetermined overhead rates to apply based off of the amount of direct labor hours. So the amount of indirect labor, we multiply the total direct labor hours by the 80 cents. So in Q1, we expect to incur 4,000 in indirect labor, 4,400 in Q2, 4,960 in Q3, 5,280 in Q4. And again, all I'm doing is I'm taking the direct labor hours incurred in that individual quarter, and I'm applying that predetermined overhead rate of 80 cents per direct labor hour. Indirect material, they're applying at a rate of $1.75 per direct labor hour. So in Q1, to get that, I take the $1.75 and I multiply by the amount of direct labor hours we expect to incur in Q1, which is 5,000. So I'm going to apply or estimate 8,750 in indirect materials in Q1, 9,625 for Q2, the $1.75 times the amount of direct labor hours in Q3 of 6,200. I'm going to estimate $10,850 in indirect material costs in Q3, and then 11,550 in Q4. So I get my total variable overhead expected to be incurred in each of those quarters by simply adding up the indirect labor and the indirect material incurred or expected to be incurred in each quarter. Fixed manufacturing overhead, that's the easy one. Fixed implies the cost does not change. It has nothing to do with direct labor hours. They expect each quarter to have factory supervisor salary of 20,000 each quarter. So notice that stays flat from quarters 1 to quarters 4. Same with depreciation, remains the same, 5,000 each quarter. We expect total fixed manufacturing overhead per quarter to be 25,000. Nothing too difficult there. So total manufacturing overhead, that's simply the sum of my total variable manufacturing overhead plus my total fixed manufacturing overhead. Just going to fix that formatting there. My total manufacturing overhead in Q1, if I add up my variable and my fixed, I get 37,750 in Q1, 39,025 in Q2, 40,810, and that's simply my total variable overhead of 15,810 in Q3 plus my 25,000 in fixed manufacturing overhead in Q3. And then finally for Q4, 41,830 is expected to be spent on manufacturing overhead, and that's the sum of my expected total fixed costs of 25,000 plus my total variable manufacturing overhead of 16,830.